tea and disappointment?
Hey,
Hey,
I love how you, but I love how you come in like,
it makes me really upset to cut you off because I enjoy respecting other people's sentences. So how are you, man?
thanks. I'm good. How are you?
I'm cold.
Yeah.
I'm in studio mode today. I've been hanging out in my studio at home most of the day as much as I could. I've got my cup of tea. Really excited. I've had a really busy week. I'm really happy to sit down and finally rest. This is like the ending of the work week. I get to sit and rest and have a cup of tea with my good old buddy, Chris Sanagan, who's right there. And you, what do you, is that's tea for finally.
Juice. It was juice. You again, I was hanging out with my kids prior to this, and so juice all around. Juice in my cup. So that's now they didn't make it for me this time. But yeah, that's where we are. I apologize.
Yeah, we're supposed to, it's the name of the show.
I know. It's like that movie Juice.
It's like I'm disappointed in you. Finally,
I felt this week was a week in terms of multiple pulls on my attention, work, children, and other things, and it just felt like this week actually, and I think probably seasonally it's not happening. It's very cold outside, like too cold. It was minus 18 the other day here.
right.
And so just this was a week. This was a week that was harder than other weeks. I wouldn't classify it as too difficult, but certainly I was much more aware of the of the difficulty of the week and sometimes of the difficulty of the days, and
Right.
I had to be purposeful and intentional about some self-care. I had to just small things, but whether it was taking myself away from the work computer screen, whether it was rescheduling a meeting to a better time in the day,
Right.
whether it was speaking with my children and having them take a break from their online schooling,
Right.
just to so that harmony could reign in the house at once again.
Yeah.
So it was a tough week, and I think it coincides a lot with we were talking earlier. Yesterday was Bell Let's Talk Day,
Hmm.
raise awareness of mental health and mental health issues, and to certainly be open to having those conversations and to to um, to be supportive for those conversations to have them, to create spaces for those conversations to
Right.
happen. And so it kind of fell into the week's the theme for the week for me. Very honestly speaking.
Right.
How about yourself?
It seems that I had an easier week than you
Mm,
in that I was able to keep things relatively stable in my little world, and I didn't have to make any conscious choices to manage myself better, other than keeping to routine. I go for a walk every day, and that really helps. It took a long time for me to learn what my needs actually were, up
mm.
to the point that I'm at now, and I'm sure those needs will change as I continue to age out. Um, but I've got a pretty good grasp at the moment as to what my needs are, and luckily, the way my life is structured, I'm able to look after those needs.
If anyone also on this call or as they watch this live or connects with us on YouTube afterwards has any thoughts or just wants to talk about anything, we're open to talk
Always.
and we're here as present as we can be and as best as we can be, just within the capacity that we can, I think, is what we want to offer to those out there who might be watching this.
Definitely.
Uh,
On to that point,
yeah.
if everyone in your life has a niche when it comes to the kind of support they can lend, one of the things that I've definitely been cognizant of, and I'm really happy to explore with someone else, is the use of creative work with mental health. I remember I made, not to put down any of the comics you and I have made together, but I was doing one of those daily draw things a couple months ago, and I drew a page where 2020 destroyed the protagonist on the page, like the sort of the a robot incarnation of the spirit of 2020 destroyed someone's life. And while I was making it, I took it seriously. But more importantly for me, it had me really mindful of the gravity of some of the things that people put into that they invest into their lives, and how the circumstances that we're all living in can completely take the life and momentum out of everything that you thought you were working toward. And it can be a really soul crushing thing. But I had never made any art that had any meaning behind it besides serving the narrative. I always struggled with it in high school when I was, an art student and painting. Like, there was nothing behind what I was doing. There was no purpose to it. But I found great comfort actually in putting some of my feelings out there about how devastating the impact of the last year has been on whether it's me or anyone else. But where I'm going with this is that I love exploring the idea of like what creativity can do to support mental health or relieve some tension or bring people together. That's definitely one of the big pluses of COVID, has been using things like Zoom to reach out to people that you would not have met before. People like my dear friend there, Craig, and other of the cartoonist kayfabe ringside seats Facebook crew that it seems that people really are comfortable being vulnerable and sharing some of their feelings in those late night moments where people are at the drawing board and just chatting, and art is a great way to bring people together and make them feel more comfortable sharing, because you're already putting yourself out there to show them what you draw and what works and what doesn't. So there's a beautiful edge of vulnerability to everything that the creators do. There you go.
I remember your piece. I remember because you would send me updates,
Sure.
because that's what we do. You send me, and then I remember texting you back and saying, he's gonna get up. Don't worry. Like, and you texted me right back. It's like, nope,
No,
he does not.
he's dead.
And
Yeah.
he's dead. And again, that wasn't an alarm bell.
No.
But it was an intentional choice.
Yeah.
I took that as what it was. I was like, oh no, this is an intentional choice. But I had made a joke back thinking, oh no, but it's a hero. He's got to get up. You're like, not this one.
No.
Not today.
But
and that's totally okay.
Right. In that situation in my head, that the character also was the spirit of, let's just say, entrepreneurship, to keep it simple. The spirit of entrepreneurship in the year 2020.
Keep it simple, the spirit of entrepreneurship in 2020. We're going to dial it down.
But the power of last year destroyed the spirit of entrepreneurship and growth and progress for that character. So that part of it was just destroyed. Doesn't mean that the person themselves is actually gone, or that I'm going anywhere. I'm okay. Thankfully, I'm okay. But that character, for whatever that character embodied, yeah, it was got all of our dreams for 2020 were dashed, all of them.
Completely. I had this conversation with a colleague 45 minutes ago,
right,
where we were chatting, and he's like, "How's the comic going?" And I said, and then we started talking about along these themes, and it's exactly what I said. I didn't say they were dashed, but I certainly said like 2020. Like, we had plans.
We did.
We had plans. We had a book coming out.
Yep.
We had shows lined up. And for all those other creators who are kind of in the same pool with us, who are doing this side of their desks, they're doing it because they love this work. They love creating. The shows are the primary avenue for sales, for connection, for audience. As much as we've embraced, and we talked about this last time, digital technologies, it's really about, in this particular context, it's really about being at those shows and meeting people in person and sharing and laughing and buying each other's products and supporting. And so with that taken away, it's been challenging for us, and I'm 100% positive it must be challenging for everybody else in our situation.
Right. Those shows energize creativity and everything. You're right. And I think it, like you're kind of saying, and I feel the need to say, our situation, even as devastating 2020 was for our creative progress into this little comic book community, it's nothing compared to what other people have been through. we both have roofs over our heads and hopefully healthy dynamics in the home, and we're okay. There's food on the table, and the houses are warm enough. We really are okay, and like your folks are okay, my folks are okay. We're all right, just within the context of trying to move our comic book project forward,
Mm-hmm.
gain more ground or footing. Yeah, that was, and the vision we had for 2020. I was
Yeah.
hoping, I joked around. I love to dream big. I was hoping we were going to get a Winnebago and do a national book tour, like, and like, no, that's ridiculous anyway, and awesome. But any kind of footing, any kind of progress, no one was able to make any. So it's no surprise that we weren't either. But it's that idea that you dream big for a little while and then something comes along and it really does change things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's important to acknowledge. It's important to acknowledge the disappointment, like it's a real thing, to not shrug it off as something I can just, I mean, certainly your outlook on life, your activities afterwards are dependent on, a lot of other things you're talking about, the privilege of our situations,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And at the same time, it has provided different avenues for opportunity, or at least areas to explore, which we're pretty excited about. Like we've got something coming up in February that we're working on right now, which is a completely different way for us and for a lot what we've seen
yeah,
to use formats at your disposal, digital formats at your disposal to tell comic stories.
yep.
And so we're really excited to explore that, to test it, to play around with it, to have fun with it. And so again, like that might not have been something that might not have been on our radar.
Right. It wouldn't have
And
happened.
it's not meant to be a substitute.
Oh,
It's
no,
just a
no.
different thing.
Totally.
It's a different thing.
So that being said, there's no need for an announcement or anything like that or too much
No.
detail. But come February 1st, there will be some Group of Seven comics content available on a daily basis. And I'm very much looking forward to it. And we'll leave it at that and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it'll be on our Instagram channel. It'll
Yes.
be here on our Instagram channel, Group of Seven Comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't wait. It's been really hard not to do too much work to start. Yeah. Anyway.
We got giddy talking about it last night.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It was, and I got really excited just as soon as I referenced one thing and I said, "This is what we're doing, right?" You went, "Yes." I'm like, I was already in, but now I'm really in.
Yeah. And it's funny because these conversations are what brought it about.
Right.
Speaking of anniversaries,
Speaking of anniversary, John McCrae,
yeah,
the
January
protagonist
28th.
of Group of Seven, Most Secret Tale. That's when he died in France in 1918, January 28th.
Well, there you go. There's one.
Yeah,
Cheers
absolutely.
to Lieutenant
Yeah.
Colonel John McCrae.
Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you.
Lieutenant.
So I've been meaning to ask you ever since
Yeah.
we talked about this earlier today when I said I have some questions for you. So when you were coming up with the idea for Group of Seven, the first 6 issues, group now known as Group of Seven, A Most Secret Tale, were you thinking about him and his service before you had a comic idea, or did you think, I want to put together a comic and he's one of the people that you came across? Please.
I think he was the start of it. I think he was probably the start, the initial genesis, the finger in the pool, the ripple of the comic. I remember at the time, it was the centennial of the First World War, back in 2014, and I had moved to Guelph a couple of years before that, and everything here is McCrae related, and I was just kind of curious and keen to learn more about the person, the historical figure that I knew, as a poet and as a soldier. And the more that I think a couple of things struck out right away around that period. There was a lot of remembrance. There was a lot of memorialization. There was a lot of history analysis coming out at that time because it had been 100 years since the First World War, and it became very clear that yes, I know him as this poet who wrote these famous lines that we recite every Remembrance Day from being a kid now. But what I didn't know was that he was a career soldier, was that he was a trained career soldier, that he signed up to fight in the war as artillery, that all this information just became a little more readily available at the time, because I think there was a lot of interest in the centennial of the war, and locally there was interest in his legacy. And so I think as soon as I learned that piece, one, it made it the character more fascinating. Absolutely. Provided way more interest in what else was going on in this person's life, especially when, learning about not being happy to be transferred from artillery to medical. Like, that's not what I signed up to do. That's not what I'm here for. All those pieces. And then at the same time, thinking about, again, who else was involved, who else was a soldier at that time, whether it was Frederick Banting. That's when I learned about really Francis Peckham Magabow for the first time. That became a bigger piece, and I was kind of like almost ashamed that I didn't know this name before. But it started with McCrae. It started with McCrae, and oh wow, he's a career soldier, and then it began. All the other pieces, all the other characters started. Oh wow, there was McCrae. Oh yeah, I knew Pearson was in the war too. Oh yeah, Conn Smythe, and then it just kind of came together. And the title also came. It all kind of, I want to say over 2 weeks or a week that I wrote down these characters and figured out, and realized that they could all play a specific role on the team based on their particular skill set.
Right.
And went from there. But I believe it starts with McCrae.
Were you cognizant of a voice that you were trying to create for the character?
As soon as I learned more about his general unhappiness in certain, and certainly being transferred to medical, and somewhat of his apathy towards publishing the poem in the first place, that all just kind of built into a voice which was there to do his duty, not happy about his circumstances, but someone who is way more experienced and a leader, having that as motivation, or having that as kind of like how he's feeling at the time when suddenly given this extraordinary mission, which starts out very ordinary, actually, right? That's kind of the pitch. It's the first incarnation of McCrae as a protagonist was very pulpy, very hard-boiled, because I liked that idea for a character to then put them on events of extraordinary nature.
Right.
And it fit with the black. We had talked about the color scheme. We talked about black and white color, and it just fit with the vibe, I think, of what we were trying to have some fun with.
But our McCrae seems to have his business together, seems to be confident, know what he's doing, and he carries some guilt with him for sure, and some regret, but he's not managing it through, sneaking a drink, or he's not addicted to morphine in the nurse's tent when no one's looking, and he's a kind of an upstanding guy and a stand-up guy.
Yeah, very much an anchor for the team to rally around,
right,
and to be that voice for but there's an actual age difference. So he is right. 42 or whatever it is. We talk about him being the most experienced. He was in combat multiple times before the First World War, being a doctor, being of that profession, and having his background, what he ended up doing, working at children's hospitals. Like, he was very much in the care space, the caregiving space, to bring that team kind of under his protection,
right, to
get the job done is really an element of that book. And to see it through, to make sure that everybody gets home safe. Like, that's also, he may not verbalize that, but it is clearly his intention. Like, when Banting is taken, he's like, this mission has changed. Mm-hmm. It's a rescue mission. We're going to get him. We're bringing him back.
Right.
Like, all those other objectives we just went through in issue 2, those are now subordinate to the main priority, which is getting our friend and colleague back.
Right. And I thought you keep him pretty pure and true. He's like a kind of classical good guy in that way. Just he's a straightforward good guy in the tradition of sort of Silver Age comics, as opposed to
right.
classical literature or anything like that. Yeah.
And we use other characters and other language to tempt him in a way, or that appeal to McCrae's intelligence and leadership, by saying, well, look how the world is.
Right.
Like, this is not like, this. I'm not. Like, this is something that you're a learned man. You've seen what this is all about. Use that as a device to speak to the character's complexities, but also to give them agency in to your point, being a classic good guy,
Right.
to tempt, but to never actually give oneself over.
I love boundaries, by the way. I love boundaries and creativity. To me, that's the magic sauce. I think if you have unlimited time and unlimited resources, what you do starts to be meaningless pretty quick, because it's those boundaries that define the accomplishment and guide what creative choices you're going to make. The boundaries are inherently what comics as a medium are about. It's about this much page, this many
Yeah,
pages.
yeah, it's a bit of literal boundary, right?
Yeah, there's
As
literal
well, right?
boundaries, but there are also, I mean,
Yeah.
you can only put this much on a page. You can only hold a reader for so long. You can only, use this many lines, really, because you got to get on to the next thing. It's very much based in time and space as boundaries. And comics work with really simple line or whatever style you choose, but to make a good comic, you could probably identify an infinite number of boundaries that the creators had to use to communicate those things. The very fact that it's also just text and image, those are huge boundaries, right?
I'm listening to Sloan's Twice Removed right now, and in fact, you're actually listening to.
Well, I'm listening to Tons. Tuns is the name of a band that also features Chris Murphy.
Right, the
The
connection is Chris Murphy. What are you reading?
X-Men Elsewhen by John Byrne. There's two trades. This is a bootleg. This is a bootleg. This is not something that's available in stores. Is John Byrne has X-Men comics that he made on his own that Marvel didn't publish, and he penciled. Um, I don't even remember how many issues. Let's just say 18 issues of X-Men that from the time he left the title in the early 80s, it's sort of as if he had have stayed on it. So there's just raw pencils and professionally lettered words of more John Byrne X-Men. What are you reading?
I'm on the Jay Stevens kick, and I'm reading his copy, his newest Dwellings, which is just a lovely combination mashup of macabre horror storytelling and cutesy Harvey comic-esque character design. And it's Stevens is such a great storyteller. So I love everything about it. I love the aesthetic. I love the vibe, the tone.
Have you ever watched him ink on Instagram?
Yeah, yeah.
His brushstroke is just
His brushstrokes, yeah.
oh,
And I'm not even an artist, but I know I can appreciate this. And like even down to things like, it's $6.66. Little flourishes like that are yeah, it's hard not to love something like that, right? It's just
right.
so much of his personality put into it. And eagerly anticipating issue 2. I think he's working on it now, according to his Instagram feed. So,
Quick hot take. Oilers uniforms, the very dark navy blue and the incredibly bright orange. Yay or nay?
I'm yay. I'm yay.
All right.
Are you? You're just gonna leave it out there? You're like, nope, not gonna answer the question.
I am a very conservative hockey jersey fan. I love things that look like what I think is traditional hockey, but I cannot take my eyes off those jerseys.
But the gap between the teams that make the playoffs in this new alignment, 4 out of the 7, and the ones that don't, there's not a lot of time to turn around for those teams who aren't doing so well. You have any questions in the meantime? Want to talk? We're here to listen. Reach out. We're on Group 7 Comics, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Jason Lapidus, Chris Sanagan, also at all those handles and all those various platforms. Group7comics.ca, info group7comics.ca. You can find our comics on Comixology, Spinwiz, Gumroad, all the platforms that we're trying to be a part of. It's been great talking to you as always.
Good talking to you, man.